Welcome to Docklands. Population 10,964 as of the 2016 census. Postcode 3008. Area is 3 square kilometers. Location 2 kilometers from Melbourne CBD. But you can probably argue that it may be part of the new CBD because of the national headquarters in Docklands of big companies like the National Australia Bank, ANZ and Medibank. Surrounding suburbs: Footscray, West Melbourne, North Melbourne, Yarraville, Port Melbourne, South Bank. Local government is the City of Melbourne. It's primarily a waterfront area centered on the banks of the Yarra River. It is bounded by the Wurundjeri Way and the Charles Grimes Bridge to the east, Citylink to the west, and Lorimer Street across the Yarra to the south. About Docklands history, listen to this.
On the website victorianplaces.com.au, they say, most of the land in Docklands was originally marsh, known as Batman's Lagoon. An exception was Batman's Hill, a wooded knoll on the north bank of the Yarra River west of Spencer Street. In 1852, the government granted 20 hectares of land for a railway terminus for proposed private railways to Williamstown and Echuca.
Construction of Docklands Stadium in the late 1990s attracted developer interest in the area. Docklands subsequently experienced an apartment boom and became a sought-after business address, attracting the national headquarters of National Australia Bank, ANZ, Medibank and the Bureau of Meteorology, as well as the regional headquarters of Ericsson and Bendigo Bank. Male to female ratio is 51.5% to 48.5%. Median age 30. Families 2,556. Average children per family 1.3. All private dwellings 6,499. Average people per household 2.1. The median household weekly income is 1,868. The median monthly mortgage repayments is 2,167. The median weekly rent is 501, and the average motor vehicle per dwelling is 0.8. People here don't bother to get married, 51.6%, compared to Australian average of 35%. The married people 39.4% compared to 48.1% in Australia. Very educated people in Docklands, bachelor degree level and above 46.9% compared to Victoria of 24.3% and Australia 22%. There's also a good number with Chinese ancestry, 21.5% compared to 4.7% in Victoria and 3.9% in Australia. English 12.2% compared to 22.6% in Victoria and 25% in Australia. Indian 11.1% compared to 2.7% in Victoria and 2% in Australia. So those three ancestries are actually the top three. 27.3% born in Australia, China 16.5%, India 12.7%, and the others are South Korea, Malaysia and England. No religion described 38.1% compared to Australia 29.6%, Catholic 12.7% compared to Australia 22.6%. Languages other than English: Mandarin 18.3% compared to Victorian average of 3.2% and Australian average of 2.5%. Hindi 4.9% compared to Victorian average 0.9% and Australia 0.7%. Cantonese 3.1%, Victorian average 1.3%, Australian average 1.2%. Most people here work full-time, 67.2% compared to Victorian average 57% and Australian average 57.7%. The employment hours worked 40 hours or more, 56.9% compared to 42.4% in Victoria and 43% in Australia. There's a lot of professionals here, 40.5% compared to Victoria 23.3% and Australia 22.2%. Managers 19.4% compared to Victoria 13.5% and in Australia 13%. A lot of them are in the computer system design industry and banking. So computer system design and related services 13.5% compared to 1.8% in Victoria and 1.5% in Australia. Banking 6.3%, Victoria 1.6%, Australia 1.3%. Weekly income is higher than average here. Personal income 970 compared to Victoria 644 and Australia 662. Family income 2,251 compared to 1,715 in Victoria and 1,734 in Australia. Household income 1,868 compared to 1,419 in Victoria and 1,438 in Australia. Now, travel to work. People who catch the tram 27.8% compared to 1.9% in Victoria and 0.5% in Australia. People who walk 24.3% compared to 3.2% in Victoria and 3.5% in Australia. Using car 22.2% compared to 61.8% in Victoria and 61.5% in Australia. If you work in the CBD, it would make sense to catch the tram or walk. But 22.2%, that's a big percentage for people to use their car, unless you're actually working outside of the Melbourne CBD. Now have a listen to this busker. Family composition: couple family without children 61.7% compared to Victorian average of 36.5% and Australian average of 37.8%. Couple family with children 25.2% compared to Victorian average of 46.3% and Australian average of 44.7%. Now, dwelling count. Occupied private dwellings 83.1% compared to Victorian average of 88.3% and Australian average of 88.8%. Unoccupied private dwellings 16.9% compared to 11.7% in Victoria and 11.2% in Australia. So it looks like there's a good number of unoccupied dwellings here. I assume some of these are actually waiting to be sold. You just need to be prepared to pay the price tag in Docklands. Dwelling structure: separate house is 0.1% compared to Victorian average of 73.2% and Australian average of 72.9%. Flat or apartment 97.1% compared to Victoria 11.6% and Australia 13.1%. If you want a nice simple living in the city, Docklands is the place for you. You just need to be prepared to pay the price tag. You've got the views, close to the CBD, pretty much close to everything. Number of bedrooms. So 1 bedroom 26.4% compared to Victoria 5.1% and Australia 5%. 2 bedrooms 55.3% compared to 19.3% in Victoria and 18.9% in Australia. 3 bedrooms 18.2%, Victoria 44%, Australia 41.1%. So you can see that majority of the homes here have either 1 or 2 bedrooms. Most people rent in Docklands 62.5% compared to Victoria 28.7% and Australia 30.9%. Those people who own outright 13.3% compared to Victoria 32.3% and Australia 31%. Owned with mortgage 21.8% and Victoria 35.3%, in Australia 34.5%. Now the rent here is expensive, $501 compared to Victorian average of $325 and Australian average of $335. The monthly mortgage repayments $2,167 compared to Victorian average of $1,728 and Australian average of $1,755. Number of vehicles, none, 0, 37.5% compared to Victoria 7.9% and Australia 7.5%. I mean, why would you have a car if you live in the city where you work? One motor vehicle, 44.7% compared to Victoria 34.2% and Australia 34.8%. That's it guys, thank you, and you can follow me on Instagram at the Australian Suburbs.